The king of the gods devoured his own newborn children whole. But when a desperate mother switched her sixth baby with a stone wrapped in blankets, she set in motion a war that would end the Golden Age forever. Kronos ruled the Golden Age with wisdom and justice, but paranoia would turn him into a monster worse than his father. Today, you'll witness the most horrific family crime in mythology. Discover how a simple deception saved the future king of the gods, and learn why this story became the template for every revolution that followed. The Age of the Titans is about to end in the most violent way possible. For countless centuries, the world flourished under Titan rule. Kronos, wielding the adamantine sickle that had castrated his father, governed with wisdom. The earth produced fruit without farming. Humans lived like gods, never aging, never suffering. Death came only as peaceful sleep. This was the Golden Age, paradise on earth. But ruling gods have one weakness: prophecy. The Fates, those ancient daughters of night, had woven a terrible thread into destiny's tapestry. They whispered to Kronos the same curse that had doomed his father. One of your children will overthrow you, just as you overthrew Uranus. At first, Kronos laughed. He was different from his father. He was wise, just, beloved by mortals and immortals alike. Surely no child of his would ever rebel against such benevolent rule. But as the eons passed, doubt crept into his mind like poison. The prophecy echoed in his thoughts during council meetings. It haunted his dreams. Every time he looked at his beautiful wife Rhea, sister queen of the Titans, he wondered, when she bears children, which one will be my destroyer? When Rhea announced her first pregnancy, Kronos felt joy, but also a terror. As she labored to bring forth their firstborn, sweat beaded on the king's forehead, not from concern for his wife's pain, but from fear of his own future. The child emerged, a beautiful daughter they named Hestia, destined to become the goddess of the hearth and home. She was perfect in every way, glowing with divine light, her eyes bright with intelligence and kindness. Rhea smiled, exhausted but happy, as she prepared to nurse her newborn. "Look, my lord, our daughter is beautiful." But Kronos saw only threat. This tiny being, so helpless and innocent, was potentially his destroyer. The prophecy didn't specify which child. It could be any of them, even this first daughter. What happened next shocked even the watching Titans. Kronos snatched the baby from Rhea's arms. Before anyone could react, he opened his massive jaws and swallowed Hestia whole. The baby goddess disappeared into her father's belly, alive but trapped in eternal darkness. Rhea's scream of horror echoed across the cosmos. But Kronos felt only relief. One potential threat eliminated. But once started, Kronos couldn't stop. When Rhea bore their second child, Demeter, future goddess of the harvest, Kronos devoured her too. Then came Hera, destined to be queen of the gods. Down his throat she went. With each birth, Rhea's pleas became more desperate. "Please, husband, these are our children. They're innocent." But Kronos had descended into madness. "The prophecy is clear," he growled, divine ichor still dripping from his lips. "One of them will overthrow me. I won't make my father's mistake of showing mercy." Fourth came Hades, future lord of the underworld. Fifth was Poseidon, destined to rule the seas. Each time, the same horrific ritual. Birth, a moment of hope in Rhea's eyes, then the terrible consumption. The other Titans watched in growing horror, but none dared challenge their king. This was their leader, the one who had freed them from imprisonment. If Kronos had become a monster, who were they to judge? By the time Rhea was pregnant with her sixth child, she was broken. 5 children devoured, 5 futures destroyed. The goddess who should have been the happy mother of the next generation of gods had become witness to the most monstrous paternal cruelty imaginable. But Rhea was more than just a victim. She was a Titan, daughter of Gaia herself, and like her mother before her, when pushed to desperation, she would show the cunning and strength that defined her lineage. This time would be different. As her sixth pregnancy neared its end, Rhea traveled in secret to the island of Crete, to a hidden cave on Mount Dicte. Here, aided by her mother Gaia and protected by loyal nymphs called the Malai, born from Uranus's blood, she gave birth in secrecy. The child was a son, the most beautiful divine infant ever born. Lightning flickered around his tiny fists. Thunder rumbled in his infant voice. Even as a newborn, power radiated from every cell of his body. His name was Zeus, but Rhea knew that if she returned with the baby, Kronos would devour him like all the others. So she devised a plan of desperate cleverness. From the sacred stones of Crete, she selected one of perfect size and weight. She wrapped it in swaddling clothes, making it look exactly like a newborn god. The deception was perfect. Even the stone radiated a faint divine aura, thanks to Gaia's blessing. Meanwhile, the real Zeus was hidden away with the nymphs, who would raise him in secret, feeding him the milk of the divine goat Amalthea and honey blessed by sacred bees. When Rhea returned to Kronos with her bundle, she played her part perfectly. Exhausted from childbirth, grieving but resigned, she presented what appeared to be her sixth child. Another son, she said quietly, tears streaming down her face. Do what you will. Kronos barely looked. The pattern was established. The routine familiar. He snatched the bundle and swallowed it whole. The stone went down his throat like all the others. In his madness and paranoia, the king of the gods never noticed the difference. He felt the same satisfaction, the same relief. Another threat eliminated. But this time, the threat lived on, hidden in a cave, growing stronger every day. For years, Zeus grew in secret on Crete. The nymphs loved him like their own son. The goat Amalthea nursed him with milk that made him grow strong and swift. Sacred bees brought him ambrosia and nectar, food of the gods. But the most important part of his education came from Gaia herself. The ancient earth goddess visited her secret great-grandson and filled his mind with terrible knowledge. The truth about his father, the fate of his siblings, and the destiny that awaited him. Your brothers and sisters live still, Gaia revealed, trapped in your father's belly, waiting for rescue. But they will never be free until Kronos himself is defeated. Zeus learned about the prophecy, about his father's madness, about the golden age built on the foundation of infanticide. With each revelation, divine rage grew in his heart. This wasn't just personal. It was cosmic justice demanding satisfaction. As Zeus reached maturity, his power became impossible to hide. Lightning danced around his fingers. Thunder was his voice. Eagles came when he called. The very air crackled with electricity when he was angry. The time for hiding was over. The time for revolution had begun. But Kronos, secure in his palace, ruling his golden age, remained oblivious to the growing threat. He had eliminated 6 children. The prophecy couldn't touch him now, or so he thought, because prophecy in Greek mythology works like fate itself. The more you try to avoid it, the more certainly you walk toward it. Every action Kronos took to prevent his overthrow actually guaranteed it would happen. By devouring his children, he had created the very enemy he feared. Zeus, raised in secret, fed on divine power, and taught the truth about his father's crimes, was becoming something Kronos could never have imagined. Not just a rival, but an agent of cosmic justice. The Golden Age was about to end, not in gradual decline, but in revolution and war. When Zeus was fully grown, Gaia revealed the final part of the plan. Your father must be made to vomit up your siblings. She explained, only then will you have allies powerful enough to challenge the Titans. But how do you make the king of the gods Vomit. Gaia had an answer. Metis, the Titaness of cunning wisdom. Metis was the daughter of Oceanus, the cleverest of all the Titans. She alone among Kronos' subjects had begun to suspect that something was wrong with their king's increasingly paranoid behavior. When Zeus approached her in disguise, revealing his true identity and his plan, Metis was horrified to learn the truth, but she was also intrigued by the challenge. Together, they concocted the perfect plan. Metis would prepare a special drink, wine mixed with mustard and salt, blessed with herbs that would cause uncontrollable vomiting. The mixture would be irresistible to Kronos, but would force his body to expel everything in his stomach. Zeus, still disguised, presented himself to his father as a new cupbearer, a young god eager to serve the great king. Kronos, flattered and unsuspicious, accepted the beautiful youth into his service. At the next great feast of the Titans, Zeus presented the poisoned cup to his father. A new vintage, great king, in honor of your wisdom and justice. Kronos drained the cup in one gulp. It tasted like victory, like power, like the sweetness of absolute rule. Then his stomach began to convulse. What followed was the most violent and disgusting scene in all of mythology. Kronos doubled over, his divine body racked with uncontrollable spasms. Then, one by one, he began to vomit up his children. First came the stone, still wrapped in its swaddling clothes, now revealed for what it truly was. Kronos stared in shock and growing horror. Then came Poseidon, fully grown, divine trident materializing in his hands as he emerged. Next, Hades, lord of the underworld, his eyes blazing with the cold fire of absolute justice. Then, the goddesses, Hera, queen of heaven, her face terrible with suppressed rage. Demeter, goddess of the harvest, her power over life and death crackling around her. And finally, Hestia, firstborn and most beloved, her gentle nature hardened by years of imprisonment. Each emerged fully grown, fully powered, and absolutely furious. The Golden Age died in that moment. As the 6 divine siblings stood arrayed against their father, as Zeus threw off his disguise and revealed himself as their liberator, as lightning began to flash and the earth itself trembled, everyone present knew that everything was about to change. The most monstrous father in mythology had created his own destroyers. By trying to prevent the prophecy, Kronos had ensured its fulfillment in the worst possible way. His children weren't just rivals, they were victims seeking justice, gods who had experienced the ultimate betrayal. The Golden Age was ending, but what came next would be even more spectacular. The war between Titans and Olympians was about to begin, a conflict that would reshape reality itself and establish a new order that would last until the end of time. Kronos held his adamantine sickle and prepared for the battle of his life. But across from him stood 6 gods united by shared trauma and burning for revenge. Led by Zeus, the son whose existence proved that no tyranny, no matter how clever, can escape the justice of fate.